I have another one here, another story here. I hadn't checked in with Wall Street on Parade for a while, and I was a little bit interested in this story. A deep dive into the unprecedented Wall Street Journal attack on FDIC Chairman Martin Gruenberg, which I thought was just the long story short that apparently the Wall Street Journal has been launching a series of attacks in an unprecedented way in terms of the volume and velocity of their criticism of an FDIC chairman and or really any bank regulator is really the point. And the article here is making an interesting argument around part of what they're saying is that they had been investigating him for claims of sexual harassment and other untoward behavior. And what the Martins have concluded is that there wasn't much to it, and that their argument is that this is really being done to get rid of someone who's trying to regulate banks to any certain degree. So as they say here, the FDIC, and part of what they're also raising is the contradiction that the FDIC is long understood to have a problem with some form of sexual harassment because they send teams of male-dominated bank examiners off to far-flung cities to examine banks, and the teams live in the same hotel and socialize for extended periods. But that when they went into this deep dive onto whether Gruenberg had done anything, they said there wasn't much found. There was really no evidence for any claims, and for all of the I don't know, half dozen or 8 stories recently done on this, there wasn't much there. So they say here, what's going on here? Gruenberg is aggressively pursuing higher capital rules for the mega banks on Wall Street, which pose systemic risks to the U.S. banking system. No community bank would be impacted by the proposed capital rules. Toppling Gruenberg from the chairmanship of the FDIC would leave an evenly split vote by the board when the FDIC votes on the new capital rules, with 2 Republican votes and 2 Democrat votes. Since it takes a majority to vote to finalize a rule, the new capital rules would very likely not go forward, an outcome that Wall Street's mega banks have heavily lobbied for and bankrolled with millions of dollars. So one of the things for me that's interesting about this story is the relationship of the press and the Wall Street Journal in particular, which I know at one point Murdoch had bought even to own at a loss because he just wanted to have an influence in just these kinds of discussions. And the extent to which the editorial page in the Wall Street Journal impacts regulators and so-called elected leadership. And as they say here, the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal has a long history of attacking regulators when they attempt to rein in the toxic and corrupt culture of the Wall Street mega banks. And they've been unsuccessful in doing so, not reining in J.P. Morgan or anyone else. So I just thought that was a little bit interesting. Just thought I would.
So let me just make sure I'm clear. So
sure.
This article is pointing out the Wall Street Journal is going nuts to defend banks by attacking somebody who could potentially put in some kind of regulation that would get the banks under control. Did I get that right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, just making sure.
And specifically, thank you. Specifically to make sure that they are honest about their capital claims so that there can't be another unexpected crash, so that they can't keep, they have to have with a certain amount of what they claim that they have actually on hand. So that's all that they're trying to say, is to prevent, to some extent, just a limitless spending, investment, and speculative blah 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 that leads da 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 da. So
I'm just wondering, is it being pitted? Like, I understand what Renee just said, but I'm just based on the language of the article, is it also being pitted politically? Like, this is a political issue between Democrats and Republicans primarily?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So it's, it has its,
Yeah, well,
I understand your question is limited,
I don't know why they always throw that in like they different. It's just... we just go throw in the DNR so people can
because they don't say,
they
don't say what the capital rule is, right? I didn't really catch what the rule is, or the description of what's being regulated. They just say
Well, to be fair, that wasn't I wasn't the focus of my interest in this article either. So I might have just skipped over that detail. But just quickly so I'll look back at here in a second for that. But to both of your points, one line here says the thrust of the unprecedented volume of articles in such a short span of time is that the culture of sexual harassment has existed for years at the FDIC under both Republican and Democratic leadership. But after more than 100 interviews, the worst thing that the investigation had come up with was that Grunberg's personal conduct is that he yelled at a female colleague for not consulting with him prior to scheduling his itinerary. So they are saying both parties have been equally guilty in a lack of oversight and sexual harassment at the FDIC. But that the attack on Grunberg in this case is specific to the slight difference they're looking to highlight between the parties, suggesting that a Democrat would be more likely to put some restriction on the banks. And the exact details of that restriction, wasn't looking for, don't have in front of me, but I will see if I can grab real quick. Admittedly, I was mostly interested in the relationship of the Wall Street Journal to the banking regulators, and also to the idea that, again, that anyone who argues that there is no relationship between politics and economics, or that we have to have one before the other, I think is, again, just another example of why there's limits to that argument.
Have you all seen that Madoff documentary on Netflix?
I'm almost sure I have. I think I've seen all of them. Yeah, there's a number of
I feel like they kind of exposed that sort of symbiotic relationship, because it was like the Wall Street Journal that was allowing him, he was their guy. So all those Financial Times and all of that, they sort of promoted him and made him the Wall Street guy to go to. So I do think that it is a tight-knit relationship.
Yeah, and the Wall Street Journal gets targeted in the Big Short movie too, when they try to go to the Wall Street Journal to expose what's happening, and the dude at the Journal's like, man, I'm not messing up my relationships with these banks and all these to tell a story about them. I need to get another interview. Anyway, okay. So I don't see, you know what, this article doesn't, I didn't miss it. This article does not have any of the details.
Which is also intentional, right?
Well, I wouldn't put that on them. I would say that what I'm catching is part of a long run of their articles. I'm sure they did cover that in one of the previous ones to this. This is the most recent in a series that they've been doing on this story. And I tend to think that as it goes, Wall Street on Parade, the Martins do I don't know how to explain it. I put them in that like CoffeeZilla lane, like the compassionate capitalist lane. That we just want a good, honest capitalism and we'll be good. Like, so they would tell the truth on that, but they wouldn't go beyond the two parties, capitalism, if that makes sense.
But that within itself is part of the problem, right? Like,
absolutely.
If you're a compassionate capitalist, I actually like that. I might start using that. Part of the goal is to not really educate people on what the real problems with capitalism is, right? Like, if they were really seeking to make sure that people are knowledgeable about the situation, that would be an easy link so people could backtrack and figure out what the actual issue is at hand. So I'm still convinced that it's also intentional, that you can't find it quickly to be able to make a quick reference and answer the question, because that's not what the end goal is. The end goal is to just point out the bare minimum of the problem so that they can say, well, look, we pointed it out, without actually educating people on the true nature of the problem, which is capitalism itself.
Well, I think
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, in terms of like Wall Street Parade, I think they do kind of talk around that. Like, I don't think they try to avoid it, because I think the nature of their work exposes that. I just don't think that they go out of their way to point to those things primarily because of their politics. But I think they're more so concerned with the scamming aspect of it than connecting the dots to why it is so easy to scam people, because capitalism is a problem. Yeah.
Right, and that's why, as Ricky said a moment ago, we need Hood Communist Thursdays. So we need the. I like Wall Street on a Parade and stuff like that for that. Some of the, I don't know, the surface, some of the important surface level stuff, not the complete analysis, for sure. But and I don't want to get caught. I feel like I'm now turning into an apologist for them, but I feel like more of the issue with them is my presentation of their work this morning than their actual work. So I just wouldn't want to put all of the negative on them.
That's
for that.
And I'm not
But
familiar
they're
with
definitely
them, so
not.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with them, so don't. This is just.
No, I really like them. I learned about them through Ben Norton and Michael Hudson. I'm assuming that's where I got it some years ago, and just started checking in with them for that. Because they pay close attention to this kind of stuff in a way that I never would, and then they, summarize it, and I think do a good job. But the analysis, the framing, and all that we need elsewhere, for sure.